We're going to bring in Drake Toll in 1 second. Of course, Drake, nobody knows more about the Big 12, and that is the nuts and bolts. You can find him always on Locked On Big 12. You can also find him with the Party Animals, touring with the Savannah Bananas. Like, he's in your living room now, working on ESPN games. I mean, the guy is as prolific as it gets. But before I bring Drake in, I just want to put my news hat on, because this is a delicate story, and I want to give you the exact details of what we know right now. And if there's anything Drake knows that's not listed here in this report, of course, we will hear from him. But this is the lawsuit that was filed in the 3rd District Court in Salt Lake County, on Wednesday, May 21st. Okay, and it's Jake Retzlaff, is listed as the defendant in the case, with Jane Doe AG as the plaintiff, obviously not her name. He has not been charged with a crime. The lawsuit alleges that Jane Doe AG and Retzlaff connected over social media in October of 2023. At the time, Retzlaff was in his first year as a player in the BYU football program. In the lawsuit, Jane Doe AG alleges the interaction occurred on or around November 22nd, 2023. Retzlaff invited Jane Doe AG to, quote, hang out and play video games. The lawsuit alleges that Retzlaff raped, strangled, and bit Jane Doe AG. Jane Doe AG alleges at some point the two began to kiss, but she did not want to do anything more. The anonymous plaintiff claimed that Retzlaff continued to escalate the situation while she tried to de-escalate and slow things down. Jane Doe AG, quote, wanted to leave, but was scared and felt like she could not get away, end quote. At one point during the assault, Jane Doe AG alleges she was in so much pain that she passed out. This is tough stuff. The lawsuit later states a rape kit was performed and pictures were taken of the cut on her lip and the bruises around her neck and on her inner thighs. According to the lawsuit, Jane Doe AG connected with the Provo Police Department, but initially did not share the name of the attacker, or the alleged attacker, because the officer who she spoke with said detectives would show up at Retzlaff's house to question him and would share her name with him, and she was scared and in shock and was not ready to confront him. The lawsuit added that at some point after speaking to police, an officer reached out to her asking for the name because someone else filed a complaint against a football player and the police wanted to see it, if that was the same person. Retzlaff has already said through his attorney, Mark Boutte, that he is innocent. This attorney, by the way, is a big-time attorney, high-powered. He actually represented Derrick Rose and a couple of Derrick Rose's friends when they were charged with rape, and he got them exonerated. Now we bring in Drake Toll, our guy from Locked On 12. Drake, looking good, my man. Obviously not the circumstances we want to connect, but here we are, and there's nobody better to dig into this stuff than with you. Your initial reaction when you saw this report come out, first of all, you're the Big 12 guy. So this is obviously, we're thinking about everybody involved. This is a delicate situation. How do you respond when you see something like this come across the wire?
Yeah, that's the first thing I want to emphasize, Pete, is that when a situation like this comes up, you want to be extremely careful for the alleged victims. And you also want to use that word alleged, because I don't think, where we sit right now with Jake Retzlaff and the context of Big 12 football and Locked On Big 12, right? The discussion of sports should take a back seat to an investigation that may result in justice coming to either the victim or the exonerated Retzlaff. That's the first thing to consider here. But when putting it in the context of a sports conversation, now we understand the ramifications of where BYU goes without a quarterback, or the ramifications of where Jake Retzlaff finds himself in a month when he looks at investigators, when he looks at the Provo PD and says, I am celibate. I have not broken any rules. I did not do this. Here are my phone records. Here's where my phone pinged from Ogden on that same night. There are so many aspects of this that I'm sure that him and his attorney, he hired the best, will approach this with to try to exonerate himself. But with all of that considered, that would be if this happened at a state school, that would be how we approach this kind of end of story. Those are the storylines. Where does the school go from here? Where does the kid go? Where does the victim go? This is BYU. The honor code that's in place, if we just take the 2 minutes of you reading that report, reading what has been put forward, and those three letters, BY and U, being tied to that, it is going to take, at this point, a miniature miracle for Retzlaff to suit up for game one or to suit up again for BYU. Because even for me, hearing you read that, you like you said, you put on the news, the journalism news glasses again, and you're just reading it directly verbatim. Hearing that is chilling for everyone associated with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, knowing that the starting quarterback of their premier spearhead university is being accused of this. It is going to take, for Retzlaff, beyond a reasonable doubt that he did not do it to get past the honor code. And if Retzlaff says, hey, I had consensual sex with this person, here's how the encounter went. Or if Retzlaff says, hey, I've had consensual sex with other people, here are other people who would vouch for my behavior and vouch for my character. And in that, there are further honor code laws broken, he will not play football for BYU next season, or he will at the very least be suspended. You'll remember back to Davies case, 2011, Jimmer Fredette. One of his teammates was caught having premarital sex. And when he was taken out of the NCAA tournament. He wasn't able to play in March Madness to the detriment of BYU basketball. They don't care about the sports thing when situations like this arise. They don't care that he's the starting quarterback for BYU football. He could be a backup corner. He could be a backup on the men's volleyball team. When these accusations are put forward, it is now up to Retzlaff to prove that he did not break the honor code, much less prove that he could be exonerated in a civil case. There are a lot of layers to unpack with this one. Again, I want to reemphasize, my first thought is with the alleged victim and handling this with care publicly as she battles this with her family, her camp, and then from there, everything else that unfolds kind of is all wrapped up in a bow tied by the honor code.
So what I'm getting from you is that even if he can prove that he's innocent, and that's a great callback. I mean, a great callback, probably not appropriate for this, but I do remember that. That was a major case in 2011, and I really hadn't thought of that. But, you know, if that is the bar, then you're correct. I mean, even if innocence is proven here, there is still the violation of the honor code. How you know, do you really believe that they are that stringent about that? That if, you know, he said, yeah, I had sex, it was consensual. Like, do you believe that he would not be allowed to play, even if found innocent on this civil suit? If
he said that I had sex, it was consensual, and here's how it played out, and then even if she came forward, and again, I want to say all of this to this point is speculative. If she came forward and said, this has been misconstrued by the media, I didn't say X, Y, and Z, Jake Retzlaff did not do these things. That may be the best case scenario from a civil standpoint for Retzlaff. From a BYU standpoint, it is just the fact that he had sex outside of marriage. So publicly in a case tied to the university, that they will not allow him to play a full football season. He will at the very least be suspended for multiple games, looking at the track record of what BYU has done. Now, another piece of this that is going to hurt Retzlaff is the development of that athletic department. They have become a much more modern athletic department, from NIL to the transfer portal. They're no longer recruiting 2 and 3 stars from Logan and then hoping they become 5-star college athletes, right? They're recruiting the 4 and 5-star kids from LA County, bringing them to Provo and competing at the highest level because they have the pockets to do so. With that, you become even more stringent when taking care of cases that involve the honor code. When people are starting to poke you and prod you and say, this isn't the BYU of old, this isn't Lavelle Edwards BYU, this is more chaotic and looser, maybe. And then when this situation arises, you must put your foot down. And Tom Holmoe is still the athletic director as of today and will likely be the athletic director through the first few months at the very least in this case, as this case unfolds. He was the athletic director during the Davies incident. He has changed for not. While NIL's become big, the portal's become big, he is going to put his foot down here. This is serious enough that if, again, it comes out that he simply had sex outside of marriage, and it's broadcast on Good Morning America and the Today Show and the Pete Sousa Show and Locked On Big 12 and what have you, BYU can't stand for. They cannot have those 3 letters attached to this without serious ramifications. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Why? Because I'm 24. Cam's like 30, and he can attest to also having the same issues as me, looking in the bank account and being, where did my money go? What used to be there? Monarch Money is your own personal CFO that gives you full visibility to take control over your finances. This isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. Stop managing your money. Start building wealth. I can find insights on how I spend, like way too much on food delivery, which I should just get in my car and go to the grocery store. And instead of juggling multiple apps, use Monarch as your one-stop shop. Track spending and even plan long-term goals with your partner. Never been smoother to do that. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year at Monarch Money.
What do you make of that? You touch on another great point. This thing is taking off like a rocket ship, BYU athletics. And you and I both, I just adore the fan base, all over the country. BYU fans are just some of the best. And you hate to see this happen to a program or an athletic department of that ilk, but this kind of stuff happens. I mean, it does. If you are playing with the best of the best and competing on the highest levels, this stuff, unfortunately, will rear its ugly head once in a while. How long do you think, or how short is the leash for someone like Retzlaff? Do you think they just could turn the page and move right on, to a guy like Tiger Bachmeier or someone else?
You may have to. And in that event, I think that BYU would do what Baylor did, very similar to Baylor in the wake of 2016. And that's, we took care of business. We're done talking about it. If you go to an administrator at Baylor right now and say, hey, I want to talk Patrick Dennehy, I want an interview with someone from Baylor to talk about the Patrick Dennehy, Dave Bliss case, you will be blocked on all fronts. It will not happen. And that would be the response from BYU. His name would be erased from BYU history, according to the university, and they would take no phone calls. We have moved forward with a new quarterback. We're not going. We put out one statement. The player is gone. That's what it would be if we get to the extreme in this case. Retzlaff would be gone and BYU would not bring it up. Now, on the contrary, the Provo Police Department released their own statement as they were accused of telling the alleged victim not to report this or to put it on the back burner. I can't remember the exact verbiage, but they say that their records have a case on November 27th of 2023. While they cannot confirm it's the same case, they've corroborated enough of the information to believe that the phone call and report they received from the woman with initials AG gave similar accounts. She was issued courtesy and care. Evidence was collected and examined, and this is a direct quote from the Provo PD. It revealed no actionable investigative leads. Our victim advocates followed up several times to offer services, but received no response. Because the civil suit does not identify the victim, we cannot be certain our police report is the same incident referenced by the plaintiff, but it does seem likely given the information we have. So if there's anything, it was very serious the way that we opened this, as it should be. If there's any reprieve for someone who thinks, hey, if the worst case is he's erased from BYU and we never hear from him again, the best case is that Provo PD is able to prove that this is something that either is misconstrued or doesn't have Retzlaff's name directly tied to it. And from there, he can suit up this fall.
He was a special player for BYU. The kind of guy that just the ball bouncing the right way for the Cougars so many times last year, which led to that magical season, right? He was the maestro all year long. When you look at their depth chart, and it's really tough to transition, but, that's what we do. It's tough to pivot. But to the football field, how are they equipped to go forward if Jake Retzlaff can't play next year?
Yeah, I think this is a BYU team that doesn't necessarily have to rely on the quarterback position as much as others. I'm looking at Baylor, and if Sawyer Robertson goes down, the trajectory of that season changes dramatically. I look at BYU and their late comebacks, and while, certainly Jake Retzlaff was in the middle of those and helping lead fourth quarter drives, the defense of BYU is where the money was made. It's where the BYU was able to win those games and come back in those games, creating turnovers, scoring via via special teams. That's where the Cougars are going to excel, even if they move to Bachmeier at quarterback. If that's the case, I think they are old enough, they are well equipped on the front line to have a younger, more inexperienced quarterback or less experienced quarterback step into a role and feel comfortable. Retzlaff never had to be a hero, never had to be a superstar. He was not Shedeur Sanders. He wasn't even Sawyer Robertson. And if he's out there this fall, I am confident he will have developed into a quarterback that helps BYU win again. I just don't see that position being as important for BYU as it is other Big 12 teams that move into their year with elite quarterbacks like an Avery Johnson who can do it all, or a Rocco Becht who's become a young star at Iowa State. And Pete, to double down on how you began the question, it's a hard pivot, but there are legal podcasts, there are legal shows and news reports and articles and blogs that will handle the legal aspect of this. For us, it is something like Locked On Big 12 in the context of football, in the context of sports. There is a point where you say, okay, how does the football team, how does the greater whole move on in the wake of something like this?
All right, a couple more questions while I got you, because I'm just delighted to have you here with me. Again, of course, Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12. So what I take from what you're saying, which is an illuminating point you're making, this is more jarring to BYU, the institution, than it is to BYU, the football team.
For sure. And part of this will be the locker room chatter. Part of this will be opposing teams that walk into LaVell Edwards Stadium with signs and posters their fans do that have crass things written about the Cougars or Jake Retzlaff. That's a massive piece of this. But the biggest overall is BYU, the institution, because of their connection to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because of what they represent, they have a higher calling. And again, as one of the fastest growing face in the entire world, any black spot on that, any mar on that is tenfold compared to what it would be at your typical state school or a different Big 12 school. They are not just affiliated with the LDS Church in the same way that Baylor may be with the Baptist Church. They are funded by the LDS Church. They want to make sure that, we talk a lot, and this is maybe a crass example, but it hits home with those in Waco. David Koresh, right? Oftentimes, when you hear Seventh-day Adventist, you think, David Koresh. There's a major event that really pings you, and that's your first association, not love and care and the other things that these faiths want to be associated with. It's this PR nightmare that occurs. And while PR is the last thing that we really are thinking about in this case, for BYU, it's one of the first things you consider, public image. And it should be, as you want to maintain a place of love and care and a place that commits to faith that so many fans and even you and myself have seen from them when we're on site in Provo or interacting with BYU fans. They have to. It is part of their DNA. They have to uphold that no matter what it takes. And in a situation like this, when these headlines have BYU considered in them, that's a major, major issue for the university.
Yeah, it's a bummer to see it anywhere. It's a total bummer to see it at BYU. Brian Santiago, new athletic director.
Yeah.
Does this appointment, does this, in your mind, change anything, the way this will be handled by the school? You mentioned outgoing athletic director will probably be governing this situation, but how involved do you think, a brand new AD like Brian Santiago will be?
Well, this is the best case scenario from an administration standpoint in the wake of the changing of the guard. And reason being, had they hired Danny Ainge, had they hired someone with a big name, that would be a very sticky situation, as a public figure will now have their reputation tied to how they react to the Jake Retzlaff case, whether he's exonerated or found liable. For Santiago stepping in, he is an extension of Tom Holmoe. He is an extension of BYU. He does not have a big name that he brings into the athletic department. He just brings Cougar. That's what he speaks, BYU Cougar. And so, having studied for a couple of decades under Holmoe and in that athletic department, I think he's well equipped to handle a situation similar to how BYU athletic directors or administrators players would in the past. This would not and should not be a litmus test of how his career as athletic director will be, because it's a challenge for anyone, no matter their experience. But it is very helpful. He's not bringing a big spotlight on himself. He's not a legendary coach that now has to deal with. We talk a lot about Tennessee Philip Fulmer and the Fulmer era as athletic director, and how that really trounced so much of what he did as a head coach. Now we often think about some of the moves he made as the AD. If that was the situation here, man, the spotlight and the story just gets even bigger and bigger. BYU wants to keep it small. Santiago can do that.
Exceptional point. Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12. Of course, you can catch him every day. And also, of course, the party animal. It's tough to talk about the party animals right now, but you're doing an amazing job with the Savannah Bananas. I can't tell you how often I hear from people who are seeing you either on ESPN or at a game. You're providing a lot of joy for folks while, achieving success yourself. So it's so fun to watch the ride, brother.
It's awesome, Pete. Always a pleasure to join you. It's so fun to talk to you, even under circumstances like this.
All right, Drake, we'll talk to you, man. Take care.